The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Use Social Media for Your Farm Business. My name is Margot Hale, and I'm the Southeast Regional Director at the National Center for Appropriate Technology, more commonly known as NCAT. NCAT is a national nonprofit organization with 6 regional offices across the country. We work on issues pertaining to sustainable agriculture, sustainable energy, and sustainable communities. Today's webinar will discuss how you can use social media for your farm business to grow your customer base and market your products. We will provide an overview of the most popular social media platforms for farms, including Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we will discuss strategies for creating content and how to engage with customers. NCAT Agriculture Specialist Luke Freeman and Lauren Manning, partner at Ozark Pasture Beef, will be sharing with us today. We will be hosting additional webinars that go more in depth about these topics, so watch for those in the coming weeks. This webinar is being broadcast by NCAT, presented in partnership with the University of Arkansas Division of Agriculture, and is funded by a grant from USDA's Small and Medium-Sized Farms Grant. Today's presentation will be about an hour long, and we'll follow it up with time for questions from you folks who are attending. As you're listening, you can type in any question you might have in the questions box on your screen. I'll compile the questions and have Luke and Lauren answer as many as we have time for following their presentation. Please don't hesitate to ask questions during the webinar. Chances are we won't be able to get to all of them during the webinar, but Luke, Lauren, or other NCAT sustainable agriculture experts will get back to you about your questions via email in the days to come. And the next hour or so isn't the only chance for you to ask questions. The webinar is being recorded and will be available on NCAT's ATRA webpage, www.atra.ncat.org. There's a feature on the page, Ask an Ag Expert, where you can send us emails with any questions you may have. Or you might want to call our Sustainable Ag helpline number, 800-346-9140. We welcome your questions on any sustainable agriculture subject, not just today's webinar. And it's worth noting that it's a free service. If you didn't get that phone number and web address, don't worry. We'll have it on screen at the end of the webinar. Also, before we begin, I just want to remind our viewers to take a few minutes to complete the survey for today's seminar. When the webinar is over and you sign out, you'll get the survey right away. The survey will help us improve our webinars in the future, and we appreciate your taking part in it. A bit about today's presenters. Luke is a horticulture specialist for NCAT, where he assists growers and leads trainings on fruit and vegetable production, marketing, and food safety. Luke and his wife Natalie own a small farm in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and they use social media extensively to share their story and communicate with customers. They raise eggs, vegetables, and cut flowers on their farm, which they market out of their general store in town. Lauren Manning is an agricultural law professor at the University of Arkansas and a partner at Ozark Pasture Beef, where she manages their social media marketing. Ozark Pasture Beef raises grass-fed beef, lamb, and goat, which they direct market to consumers and restaurants throughout Northwest Arkansas. I will now turn things over to Lauren.
Thanks, Margot. Before we get started, we're going to do a brief overview, next slide please, to show you what our topics are going to be for today. So first we're going to talk about the benefits of social media and why you should consider using it. Then Luke is going to take you through each of the most popular platforms and describe how they're similar and how they're different. Then we're going to talk about some strategies for creating content, which can be one of the most challenging barriers for maintaining a social media account. Then we're going to look at how to take some good photos, and then we're going to finish with talking about how to engage with customers. Next slide. So a little bit more about me. I raise grass-fed, pasture-raised beef, lamb, and goat in Northwest Arkansas. We direct market to customers and to restaurants. So for us, social media has been a huge way to try and find new customers. I'm also a beginning farmer. I've only been farming about 3 years now. and I don't come from a farm background. And in some ways, I think through social media, that's helped me be able to communicate a little bit differently with consumers who don't know much about farming. And then finally, as Margot mentioned, I teach agricultural law at the University of Arkansas. Next slide. So what are the benefits of social media? Why should we consider using this for our farm businesses? Well, here's 5 reasons. The first one is that it can help set you apart from other farms and competitors. As more and more people are using social media, it's getting crowded in the space, and using social media can help you ensure that you stand out. More and more consumers are starting to use Google and Facebook and Instagram to seek out certain products. And if you have a social media presence, then you increase your chances that they're going to land at your webpage or at your farm and contact you to purchase your products. It can also help you connect with new customers while improving your existing customer relationships. One of the phenomena of social media is that it allows us to see what other people's lives are like. And a lot of consumers are looking to local food, not just because of the products, but they want to understand more about how our food is raised and what food production really entails. So if you can tell a little bit of a personal story on your social media, you can really have a connection with that customer beyond just selling them what your product is. And then as far as your existing customer base, at least in our experience, they really enjoy seeing things change season to season, seeing when we get new animals. They really start getting invested in what goes on at the farm. And it's really, I think, helps strengthen those existing customer relationships. It can also help educate the public about your business. It's getting really noisy in the food space in terms of different types of agricultural processes, different types of products. Labeling alone is really confusing for a lot of customers. What does cage-free mean? What does pasture-raised mean? So we really use social media to help educate the public about what we do, the principles that we use, and why we use them. It can also help you stay relevant as consumers increase their online shopping trends. They're starting to look more and more to online shopping, and it really amazes us how many people are willing to go out of their way to meet us in a parking lot to pick up their order when they could easily just go to a grocery store and buy something that's sort of comparable. So as people start looking for online shopping, a lot of the places that they go to find vendors is social media. So it really can help capture that consumer base who is dedicated to local food and who's willing to seek it out. And finally, this is probably our favorite aspect of social media. You can connect with other farmers, and we've met farmers through social media all over the world, no exaggeration, and talk to them in private messages about things they're dealing with, what they raise. And it's really kind of encouraging when you have this online community of farmers and you get to see what it would be like to do the same type of farming in England or other parts of the country. So that's been really fun for us personally. Next slide. There are some struggles with social media, and I don't want to give you the picture that it's a no-brainer, it's super simple, that there aren't any problems that we deal with, because there are certain struggles and gripes that we have with social media. And the first one is reaching the right audience. When you send a post out in social media, you don't always know who's seeing it or who that post is going to. And so we oftentimes wonder, is our content reaching the audience that we want it to reach? Could we change certain things if we use different hashtags? So we're constantly experimenting with this. And on Instagram, I oftentimes look at the people who like our posts and try and figure out where are they from, where do they live, what type of food products does it seem like this person is after, if I can gauge any sense of that. And that's something that we're constantly trying to calibrate. And it can be a little frustrating when you see that a post that you publish was liked by people who live in Canada, but nobody who lives right in your neighborhood. So that's something that we're constantly working on. Generating content. It can get a little bit old as the person posting, trying to think, what new and exciting topic do I want to post to engage people today? We're going to talk a whole lot more about that. If you kind of just make a plan or you have certain categories of content, it's actually pretty easy, but there are some days where I think I run out of ideas of things to post and talk about. Knowing whether the hassle is worth the benefit. It's not always clear when a customer contacts you that they found you from social media. We've actually started asking that. When we have a new customer contact us, we always ask, how did you hear about us? How did you find us? And it's helped us really track and see whether our social media efforts are paying off in terms of customers. People only seem to like cute baby pictures. There's nothing wrong with cute baby pictures, of course, but when we post educational posts or we post about special meat packages that we're doing and we get far less likes, and then we post a picture of an adorable set of triplet goat kids and it gets 120 likes, you know, sometimes that can be a little frustrating. We've gained a few new customers through social media, and for us, that's been worth it so far. We'd like to see a bigger interaction with customers and new customers, so it's something we're constantly working on. Next slide.
Hey folks, this is Luke here. As Margot mentioned, I'm a horticulture specialist with Netiquette, but my wife Natalie and I also own Freckled Hen Farm, which is a small farm right outside of Fayetteville. We raise laying hens and sell eggs, produce, cut flowers in town. We have a general store called Freckled Hen Farmhouse where we market most of our products, but there's also a local grocery store in town where we sell our eggs. So social media has really played a huge role in us growing our farm business. We started the farm almost 5 years ago. So it's been a great way for us to build that local customer base, share our story, stay in touch with customers, and also it helps our customers stay up to date with what produce we're bringing into the store that week. And it's just a reminder for them to drop by and pick up our products. Next slide. So for those of you getting started with social media, with all the options out there, with all the different social media platforms, it might be a little intimidating to think about where to start and what to choose. So, if you were to choose one, definitely Facebook is a great place to start. In this webinar, we're going to be talking about the top 3 social media platforms, which includes Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Next slide. So looking at social media usage among American adults, you can see in this bar graph that Facebook is definitely the #1 social media platform in this country. With 62% of men and 74% of women in the US on Facebook. Instagram, you have lower rates of use at 30 and 39% of men and women respectively, and then Twitter at 23 and 24% of men and women respectively. And one thing to point out here with this this bar graph is that difference in terms of usage between men and women. For the most part, your ideal demographic for marketing farm products is going to be women, who are most likely going to be, the person in their family purchasing groceries and purchasing farm products. So, that trend we see in social media of having higher usage rates among women definitely works to your advantage. Next slide. So digging in a little more into Facebook, as I mentioned, it's the #1 social media platform. If you aren't on social media at all, this is really the place to get started with your farm. Looking across all US adults, 68% are on Facebook, which is a huge percentage of the population. Another thing you see on Facebook is that there are high usage rates across all age groups, even into the older age categories. Looking at the 50+ age group, you still see high usage rates. So Facebook is really a great way to reach a wide audience. And even in rural areas, you have high usage rates at 58% of rural Americans on Facebook. One thing you'll notice is 74% of Facebook users visit the site daily. So most people are coming back to Facebook every day, and it's really important that you're continuing to produce new content so people are seeing fresh content from your farm as they're visiting Facebook. It's a great way to reach a local audience. One way Facebook works is that it utilizes social networks in terms of friends of friends, people in your geographical area. So Facebook, really, in my opinion, is the best way through social media to target that local audience if you're marketing your products locally. And another thing to understand about Facebook is how the algorithm works. So the algorithm is essentially the formula that determines how people are seeing content. And the way Facebook works is that content that gets more engagement is more likely to be seen. So if your posts are getting likes, shares, comments, that just increases the likelihood that other people are going to see your content. So as you're producing content, it's important to think about what kind of content, what kind of photos or posts you can create that are going to get that engagement. Next slide. So looking at what you need to know to create a Facebook profile, and I will preface this by saying that the second webinar in this series, which is going to be in June, is going to be specifically on Facebook, and we are going to go step by step of how to create a farm Facebook page. So if you want more information on that, definitely stay tuned and join us in June for that webinar. But here's just a basic summary of getting started on Facebook for your farm. So you can create a business profile on Facebook, which is what we would encourage you to do when creating your farm Facebook profile. This is going to be a little different than your personal profile, and it gives you a little more ability to track analytics and also to be able to advertise and boost posts. So on your farm business profile on Facebook, you'll want to have a profile picture that's either a logo of your farm or maybe a picture of your farm or your farm family. And then you'll want to have your farm contact info. So that'll be your farm phone number, email address, your physical address. Also post your business hours. If your farm is open to the public or there are hours when people can come and pick up product from your farm, you'll definitely want to include those business hours on your Facebook page. And also a website link if you have a business website. So you want to create a Facebook page that's a great landing page for anyone who is curious about learning more about your farm. You have all of that information right there on that farm Facebook page. When it comes to posting content, if you're just getting started, I would encourage you to post at least 3 times per week to keep the content fresh and updated. Another feature of Facebook that's relatively new but is becoming more and more popular is called Facebook Live, which is essentially live videos that allows people to tune in, watch in real time a video that you're streaming on Facebook, and then that video is left on Facebook so people can watch that after the live event. And this is a great way to highlight what's going on your farm. Maybe you're a U-pick operation and your strawberries are just coming into season and you're opening your farm for U-pick strawberries and you want to do a live video to show people strawberries on the plant, get people excited about coming out and picking strawberries. So Facebook Live is really great for that. Another thing Facebook is fantastic for is promoting farm events. If you're doing a farm-to-table dinner, maybe having an open house on your farm, Facebook makes it easy to create an event that you can then share with those who follow your page. Friends can share that event, and you can see RSVPs to get an idea of how many people are going to be attending. Also, if you create any events, it'll show up on kind of the community calendar on Facebook. So people in your area, if they're looking at what's going on this weekend in their area, they'd be able to see your event. Then when it comes to advertising and selling your product, Facebook makes it really easy to be able to list the products you sell, also advertise to specific demographics. So you can see in this screenshot that I pasted from our farm Facebook page that I have listed the turnips, beets, and lettuce that we're currently selling. So what I'm able to do is link those products to our farm website, where we have an e-commerce store where people can order those products online and then pay for them online and come pick them up in person. So Facebook has those integrations where you can make it easy for people to buy directly through your Facebook page. Another thing I would encourage you to do on Facebook is have a way for people to sign up for your email newsletter. This is a great way for you to stay in touch with your customers, sending a weekly email newsletter, let them know what you're harvesting on the farm that week, what markets you'll be at, what you're bringing to market, letting them know about special events. So definitely have a place to collect email addresses for your email newsletter. Next slide. All right, now for Instagram. So, as you saw before in that bar graph slide, Instagram doesn't have as much usage as Facebook, but it's another great option for social media marketing for your farm, especially if you're a visual person. So Instagram is really catered to high quality photos and videos. So if you like shooting photos of your farm, you like taking pictures, Instagram's a great platform for you. One thing to note is that 35% of adults are on Instagram, and the audience skews younger. So in that 18 to 49 year category, you get good percentage of the population on Instagram, but when you start looking at 50 plus, you're down in the 20%, 10% categories. So it's a good platform for reaching a younger audience, a more urban audience, but it doesn't hit as wide of an audience as Facebook. One thing you'll notice on Instagram is you tend to target a more national audience clustered around common interests. So it's very easy for people to find your farm Instagram page if they're looking for profiles that are involved in organic farming or local foods or pastured meats. So what you might find in your Instagram following is that you have a lot of followers who aren't in your specific local area, and so that's something to be aware of, that you might have followers who aren't your ideal customer base, but it's still a great way to promote your farm and network with others. Next slide. So looking at getting started on Instagram, there are a few options for creating your farm business presence on Instagram. So one option is creating a business profile on Instagram like you do on Facebook, and that gives you the options of tracking analytics, tracking engagement, and also boosting your Instagram posts, kind of paying for advertising on Instagram. You can create a personal Instagram page, which doesn't give you those analytics capabilities. Or as Natalie and I did, we just created a hashtag for our farm. So you can see in that screenshot I included in the slide, we have hashtag Freckled Hen Farm. So people can go to that hashtag, see all the farm posts we have, and then they can also follow myself and Natalie. And most of the content we're posting are posts about the farm. And the reason we did that is both of us had personal Instagram accounts before we started the farm. So having that hashtag was a way for us both to generate content and have it in one place. If you're just starting from scratch, I would recommend creating a farm business profile on Instagram. One thing you can do on Instagram is easily connect to your Facebook account. So whatever photo you're posting on Instagram is also posted on your Facebook. So what that does is that helps kind of hit two birds with one stone, helps keep fresh content on your farm Facebook account, and Instagram makes it really easy to do that. Another feature of Instagram is Instagram Stories. What these are shorter videos, under 30 seconds, which really are designed to give people a more intimate, candid, behind-the-scenes look. This is a great way to show kind of the behind the scenes of the farm. Instagram photos are usually polished, edited, really show, the picture perfect version of the farm. Instagram stories as a way to kind of get behind the curtain, show people in a more candid way what's going on your farm. You can kind of directly speak to your audience, show them what you're doing that day. And that's something that gets a lot of engagement. Natalie and I have both found that we get a lot of engagement on our Instagram stories about our farm. Hashtags are really important on Instagram, and this is something that you'll just kind of get better with as you practice. This is a way for people to be able to find posts, find Instagram accounts that are catered to their interests. So something like hashtag organic, hashtag locally grown, or hashtag pasture raised. Just depending on what content you're posting about, definitely include a few hashtags to help people find that content. And as Lauren was talking about, using social media to interact with other farmers and businesses, Instagram is really great for that. It's a great way to find other farmers who you can be inspired by, who you can learn from. I really love following other small farmers, seeing what tools they're using, seeing what varieties they're growing. And Instagram is really a great way to have that farming community online for social media. So it also has some benefits in terms of just your own ability to network with others, learn from others, in addition to marketing your product to customers. Next slide. So now a little bit more about Twitter. Twitter is very text heavy. It's great for short and succinct posts. There's a 280 character limit on your posts, so you are limited in terms of what you're able to post about. It's very news and information heavy. What you'll find is a lot of ag organizations like USDA or SARE are on Twitter. It's a great place to go to get news and information. I will say of these three platforms we're talking about, Twitter is the one that's used less often for farm accounts. 24% of the population is on Twitter, and the audience definitely skews young. One thing to note about Twitter users are that they're on Twitter less frequently. About 46% of users visit daily, so there's not as much of a need to post daily content, say, compared to Instagram. Next slide. So when it comes to posting on Twitter, if you have a farm Twitter profile, short posts to the point do really well on Twitter. You're also able to post photos and videos, which can help make your content stand out. Since Twitter is so text heavy, having some beautiful photos of the farm on Twitter can really make your content stand out from everything else. Hashtags are really important on Twitter, and that's how people would be able to find your content. And Twitter is a great way to engage with customers and followers. Twitter makes it easy to respond to comments, to directly tweet at someone, and also engage with local news organizations, or maybe local farming organizations. If you have a farm event, Twitter would be a good way for you to post about that event. Tag local news outlets, see if they'll pick up the event and promote it for you. But on whole, I would say of these three, Twitter is the least commonly used for farm accounts. Next slide. All right, so now I'm going to spend some time talking more about strategies for creating content on social media, regardless of what platform you're posting on. So the first tip I have for you is take a lot of photos. Always have your smartphone on you. Most smartphones these days take fantastic photos, and just be snapping photos at every opportunity you have. There will be days when the lighting's good, where you're feeling inspired. Take a lot of pictures and have those saved up for days when you're just not feeling as inspired. Posting on social media is really all about sharing your story. So people are following your farm because they're interested in the farm life. They're interested in what it's like for you living on a farm, working on a farm. They're really interested in all those little details that make up your story. So that's an important thing for you to consider. But also know that your audience is most likely not familiar with farming. Most Americans these days don't grow up on a farm and don't visit farms very often, and have very little familiarity with how food is actually grown. So you can use that as an opportunity to educate your audience. In addition, just understand that there are specific farming terms, jargon that your audience won't understand. So you'll want to make sure you're catering it to an audience that's not familiar with farming. When it comes to creating content, document events on the farm, things that are happening. What are you harvesting? Are there baby animals being born? Are you working on new projects? Are you building out infrastructure? What are you doing this week? What are you looking forward to? These are the kinds of things for you to post about. In general, I'd encourage you to keep your social media posts positive, pretty, and fun. People love following farms where they feel inspired, they feel this connection with nature. People are really looking for that rosy side of farming. I'm not saying that you need to, hide all the negatives, but definitely put positive spin on the struggles. Really show the bright side of farming, things you love doing. You want your social media account to be a place where people can come to feel inspired and feel connected with nature and connected with your story. Next slide. So some ideas for good content for your social media. Daily chores are a great opportunity, whether it be feeding animals, harvesting, planting, weeding. These day-to-day, everyday activities for you, they can be fascinating windows into the farm life for your followers who aren't familiar with farming. So you can see I grabbed a photo from my Instagram of feeding the chickens. That morning light was beautifully shining into the chicken coop. It made a great photo right there. Also, you can see this photo of our nephew Oliver, who is helping us weed the garden, and he was feeding those weeds to the goats. And it's just a special moment of a connection, a young child connecting with farm animals. This is something that really pulls at people's heartstrings, makes them feel, connected to your farm. These all make really great social media posts. Next slide. And as Lauren mentioned, everybody loves photos of baby animals. So, if you have new chicks on the farm, they just came in the mail. If it's lambing season, you have a bunch of lambs running around, or goat kids, maybe it's calving season. This is a great opportunity for you to create a lot of great content, taking photos and videos of baby animals on your farm. People love seeing those babies that are just born. They love seeing them grow up. So just documenting the growth of chicks or your goat kids on the farm. This is a fantastic opportunity to create great content. Next slide. And then your farm products. You definitely want to take time, be intentional about promoting the products that you're selling. So for us, with our garden, that means close-up shots of the produce we're growing to show our followers what we're growing, what they can anticipate us bringing to the store, and also posts that show what we're harvesting to bring to the store that day. So you can see I have a photo that Natalie posted of me harvesting lettuce. It's great if there are two of you working on the farm. One person can take a photo of the other person harvesting. People really love photos that have people in them. So if possible, get photos with someone in them. Someone from your farm family harvesting, showing off the product, showing what you're doing that morning. You'll also see photos I included of me harvesting our Japanese salad turnips and squash. You'll see with those salad turnips, I took a minute to wash them off so you have bright white roots in contrast with that dark background. Really makes the product stand out. It looks appetizing, it looks beautiful. When taking photos of your farm products, you definitely want them to look stunning in these photos, look ready to eat. So if that means wiping them off, spraying them off, cleaning them quickly before you snap that photo, it's definitely worth it. And also when you're taking photos of farm products, be sure to think about your background. You can see in the photo that I have here of the squash that I had harvested. I have squash leaves as the background, but that background really helps the squash stand out. So people can really see that product as the focal point. And there's that contrast between the farm product I'm highlighting and the background. Next slide. So in addition to the products you're growing and selling, also just scenic photos of your farm make really good content. So these can be wide shots that give people kind of a sense of place, that big picture of your farm. And also having wider shots of your farm throughout the season can help people see the changes in the seasons on your farm. People are feeling disconnected from nature, And your social media account may be somewhere they turn to feel that connection, to see the changes in season, to see how lush and green things are looking in the spring, to see how the leaves are starting to change color in the fall. So, including some of these wider shots of your farm every so often can be really important and engaging. I'm sure all of you who are farming have those moments. Maybe it's early in the morning or it's in the evening when you just pause and take it all in. You're just in awe with the natural beauty of your farm. That's a great opportunity to snap a photo and share that moment with your followers. So I have this example of a shot of our garden in the spring. People can see what's growing with the Chinese cabbage and broccoli and kale. And they can kind of look forward to what we'll be bringing to market in the future. So these are some great ideas for content. Next slide. And then where can customers find your products? So the where, when, and how customers can purchase your products. You definitely want to provide that information to them. Shots of your products at the store. If you're making a delivery to a restaurant, shooting a photo of that delivery, tagging the restaurant that you're delivering produce to. If you're at a farmer's market on a Saturday morning, a shot of one of you standing there at the farmer's market booth, talking about when the farmer's market opens, where it is, how people can come find you, buy your products, what you have that day. If customers can order online, definitely being sure to mention that in your social media posts and having links to how customers can purchase your products online. So all these things are important to have as part of your social media content. You don't want every post to be a salesy post, but you definitely want to include that so people know how and when they can purchase your products. Next slide. And then lastly, sharing the struggles. So, farming's not a cakewalk. There are difficulties in farming. As I mentioned at the top, you definitely want to keep things positive, keep the struggles to a minimum, but there is a way to artfully share the struggle of farming. Educate your followers and your customers that farming isn't easy, that a lot of things are out of your control. Sometimes there's a crop failure. In the case of this example I posted, sometimes the goats bust into the chicken coop and almost kill themselves by eating chicken feed, let all the chickens out. Sometimes things go wrong. But I will say, when you're posting about these struggles, posting about these difficulties, it's best to put a positive spin on it, stay upbeat. Humor helps. And definitely limit the number of negative posts on your social media. I think a little bit of, these harsh realities of farming can help kind of round out the picture and help people understand that farming isn't easy. But you definitely want the majority of your posts to be, positive and uplifting. Next slide.
All right, now we're going to talk about the photos that you post and how to take good photos that really catch people's attention. And they always say that a photo is worth 1,000 words, and that's especially true on social media. Before people read your post, oftentimes they're just going to scroll through and see what catches their eye. So having really well thought out photos can make a huge difference. Before we get into this, the best advice I can give you on taking photos is to take a ton of them. You're not working for National Geographic. You don't have 10 minutes to set up a camera and get the lighting just right. So when I'm at the farm and I know I need more pictures to post throughout the week, I just take a ton. And you'll be amazed if you take 30 pictures throughout the day, you'll get 5 really excellent pictures that with a little bit of editing in the Instagram app or Facebook app are really quite spectacular. So first, presentation. These are 2 photos of the exact same thing, but if you're trying to showcase a certain item, you want that item to really pop. And so you can see in the photo on the left, it's much easier to tell what the subject of this photo is as opposed to the photo on the right, where those cages are really washed out in the background. So a lot of times thinking about presentation, what angle to take the photo can really help. And again, here, taking a ton of photos is helpful. If you're not sure what angle will be the most useful, take a few, take a couple. Don't stress yourself out trying to figure out in that moment what's going to work the best. Just snap a bunch of shots and get back to work. Next slide. Here's another example of presentation. I don't know about your farm, but my farm is not a beautiful Williams and Sonoma farm. It's pretty messy sometimes. We're a working livestock farm. We've got 3 different species, all kinds of stuff going on. So we like to try and show the tidiest presentation of the farm that we can on social media. Now, the photo on the left, if you want to talk about what a busy day it's been, how much you've been working, then yeah, having the tools displayed there might be helpful. But if you're trying to showcase the garden bed, then the photo on the left doesn't really accomplish that, whereas the photo on the right really draws that person's eye to the subject of the photo. So again, just another example of how when you're taking photos, think about the presentation, think about what you want to showcase. Next slide. So one of the biggest rules I tell people, especially my partners I work with, is don't use Zoom. And this picture, I think, is also worth 1,000 words as to why Zoom is really ineffective for social media posts. If you're scrolling through Instagram or Facebook, you're probably not going to stop at this photo and say, wow, that's beautiful. You might stop to try and figure out what those animals are or what's going on in this photo, but this is not a really good representation of a great photo on Instagram. So don't use Zoom. If you're trying to take a picture and you're too far away, my rule of thumb is to get your phone out and start taking pictures and just walk closer. And animals have this uncanny way of always knowing when you want to take their picture and moving or leaving or walking away. So I take my phone out, I'll snap a picture and then try and see if I can walk closer. Of course, that's really just an issue with animals because they always know when their picture's being taken. Next slide. Lighting is another huge factor to consider, and there are certain ways on an iPhone where you can play around with the lighting. If you have your phone out and you're going to take a picture, you can tap on different areas of the screen and it will change what the lighting focus is on the photo. I always have sunglasses and a hat on, so sometimes it's hard for me to see, am I focusing the lighting right? So again, what I usually do is take 5 pictures with different lighting focuses and then figure out later when I'm posting which photo has the best lighting. You can see in that photo on the left, we're trying to take a photograph of the sheep, but all we see is the sky. And the sky is beautiful, but if someone's scrolling, it's really not going to stand out. And sheep against a nice green pasture is really eye-popping usually, and so that would be the thing that you want to focus. So before I took this picture, what I should have done is tap my finger on the sheep, and then the iPhone would have focused into where the sheep are and adjusted that lighting. Another example on the right. This is a good example of presentation and lighting. If I'm trying to take a picture of that pair, I probably should have walked around to the other side. Having all that shade in the foreground makes it a little difficult to see exactly what it is we're supposed to be looking at. Next slide. The rule of thirds is really helpful for organizing subjects in a photograph. If you imagine that your camera is divided by these horizontal and vertical lines, it can give you some nice points in the photograph to orient your subjects. And this picture of these twin calves on the left is one of the best examples. So they say in photography school that you're supposed to align your subjects in the photograph with these points, and then you're always supposed to have the horizon somewhere in that middle section of horizontal lines. So you can see here, these 2 calves were especially patient that day and stood nicely for me, and I aligned them in those 2 points and snapped the photo and had that horizon right there in the middle. On the right, we wanted to showcase some of our calves on nice green pasture, so I tried to arrange them to be right in the middle of that photograph so that the eye naturally goes to the center and they see all these great looking calves. And then we have a nice shot of the pasture and all that wonderful forage in the foreground. So keep in mind that rule of thirds when you're trying to organize things in a photograph. And again, if you're not sure if you're lining it up correctly, just take as many photos as you can and figure it out later when you have time to sit down indoors. Next slide. Distance also matters, and this is a picture of the same farmer's market, but these 2 photos don't really capture what's being sold at the farmer's market, what's going on at the farmer's market. The one on the left, it could be a craft fair, it could be anything, whereas the photo on the right, if it were me scrolling through Instagram, the first thing that my eye would stop at on this photo is the woman in the yellow sweater. So when you're thinking about the appropriate distance, think about your subject also. What is it that I'm really trying to convey in this photograph? And here, waiting for those people to move out of the way to take a nice shot of all that beautiful produce at the farmer's market would probably have been more effective. Next slide. Food photos are extremely tricky. And if you aren't sure whether a food photo looks appetizing or not, I would suggest maybe not posting it, because there's nothing worse for business than having really undesirable pictures of your actual products that you're trying to sell. And Luke touched on this also with those radishes. He took the time to clean them off to make sure they looked really great, nice and clean, shiny and bright, and something that you'd want to take home and cook that day. So for this photo of eggs on the left, we made sure that we cleaned them all off, put them in nice clean egg cartons. This photo on the right is from one of our chef clients, and he's really good about sending us photographs of dishes he plates with our meat before they're served. So if you have a chef that's willing to work with you on that, it can be a great way to post really beautiful food photos. We got lots of comments on that photo, obviously. It looks pretty delicious to a lot of folks. And then you can also tag the restaurant, you can tag that chef, and they usually appreciate the exposure also. Next slide. Here's an example of a bad food photo. And I just really wanted you to see what a bad food photo looks like. This doesn't look very appetizing to many people. There's freezer burn, the lighting's horrible, it's blurry. This isn't something that most people would scroll past and think, man, where can I buy that? That looks delicious. So compare those good food photos with bad food photos. A lot of taking good food photographs has to do with lighting and just making sure everything looks very clean. You don't want a messy background. You don't want a greasy stove in the background. Usually a nice, bright, white plate is the best background for showcasing food items. Next slide. We're going to switch gears now and talk about a really popular ongoing issue with social media, and something that we refer to as netiquette. And netiquette, it refers to the correct or acceptable way of communicating with other people on the internet. When you have a farm social media account, it's usually quite different than your personal social media, and you need to keep them compartmentalized in your head. Your personal social media remains your personal outlet, but when you have your farm business on a social media account, you have to remember that you're representing your brand and you're representing your business. Now, in farming, there can be some controversial topics, especially with livestock and certain practices in farming, things like that. And so oftentimes, people will comment negative things about your farm or things that you're doing, or you might get a customer who's not satisfied with your product, and that person might turn to social media to leave a negative comment. So we're going to talk about professional and productive ways to respond to those people that deal with the situation and diffuse it while still making you look like a very professional, serious business. So we know the temptation to engage and lash out is very real. I don't want to gloss over that. There's been things posted on our social media that have made me upset when I read the comment, but you have to think that there are very real, serious consequences to how you choose to respond. Social media is incredibly public. You can't really delete those comments, and you have to remember that they're going to be hanging out there for future customers to see and for existing customers to see. Next slide. So here's some Netiquette 101 rules to keep in mind. If you do receive a negative comment, whether it's a bad review or someone who's just sort of harassing you about your farm practices, you want to acknowledge it or respond to it in a timely manner. You don't want to leave a negative comment just hanging out there on your social media page, because if you don't respond, people who see that comment and review it might read into that, the fact that you didn't respond. When you are responding, always use appropriate language. And again, I know it can be hard to not just vent our initial frustrations, but remember, you have to be professional. You're representing your business. Identify or acknowledge that person's opinion, complaint, or dissatisfaction. And this can oftentimes be the hardest thing. Saying something like, I understand your perspective, or I see where you're coming from, or I'm sorry that happened, or that you feel that way, is usually a really good way to diffuse the situation. And then finally, keep it short and sweet. In this day and age, I'm sure we've all seen comment exchanges on Facebook that are like small dissertations on a topic, and that's not always the most productive way to handle something. If you do want to have a more robust, involved conversation with someone who's leaving comments on your social media, my best practice there is to take it into a direct message where it's only a message between you and that person that's not public for other people to see. You know, offer to talk to them on the phone, something like that, whatever you're comfortable with. But moving that more in-depth conversation to a private forum is usually a better practice than having, you know, a 25 comment exchange on your social media page. Next slide. You can turn a negative comment into an opportunity for education if you're feeling patient. Now, this has to be a situation where, you know, you're not feeling riled up or emotional about something. But if somebody posts something that is really just by virtue of them not understanding farming or agriculture, then use it as an opportunity to educate them. And we'll look at an example of that in a few slides. You can include references to positive feedback regarding the same issue or subject. You know, if one person has a very negative experience with one of your products, you can sort of allude to the fact that you've had really positive reviews in other instances. Usually in your web page, on your Facebook page, there is a section where you can have reviews or endorsements from other folks. So that can kind of help diminish one really scathing review that you get. The last resort, there are ways on social media platforms to block or delete or report someone who's causing a real problem. I don't encourage you to do this as the initial step because, again, it's your business. You want to engage with the public, and you can't just block everybody who says something even remotely negative about you. So if someone becomes really harassing and they're just doing it for sport and they're being really disruptive, keep in mind that there are ways in these social media platforms to block that person when they become a problem that you can no longer diffuse. Next slide. Okay, I've come up with a few examples to show you some common negative comments that we've received or that other farmers we know have received, and some examples of how you'd want to respond. So here's the first example. Assume you have a Facebook page and assume you sell poultry products, and a woman leaves this comment on your Facebook. I purchased 2 packages of chicken wings from this farm at the farmer's market on Saturday, and by the time I got them home, the packages were leaking and the meat seemed to be completely thawed out. There was a funny odor when I opened them, so I tossed it out because I didn't want to take a chance. Nice family, but please work on your packaging and make sure things stay frozen. So what's the best way to respond to this? Well, I think this is a good opportunity to show some business goodwill and to maybe offer them a tip. So here's an example of how I might respond. Next slide. I might say something like, we're sorry to hear that happen. If you come see us at the farmer's market next weekend, we would like to give you 25% off your next purchase. For many of our customers, picking up frozen meat and getting it home quickly can be challenging. So there you're recognizing the issue. You're saying, we understand that this is something that's difficult. Some of them have purchased inexpensive cooler totes that have helped keep things frozen during transit. I'd be happy to help share some other ideas on transporting our products. Sorry again, and thank you for your feedback. So again, you're turning it into an opportunity to really work with this customer to say, I'm sorry, I realize that yes, frozen meat presents different challenges than other products you get at the farmer's market. And if you're able to offer some kind of discount like that, it really shows goodwill that you believe in your product and you want to make the situation right and that you want this consumer to be happy. Next slide. So here's another example, and as a livestock farmer, we get lots of questions during extreme weather about the animals and how well they tolerate it. So let's assume you post a photo of your animals out in the pasture during a snowstorm in January. Someone comments on this photo and says, don't you let your animals come inside in that kind of weather. If you're cold, they're cold too. At least you get to go inside and warm up. What is the best way to respond? Well, we see this as an opportunity to educate. Next slide. Here's an example of something that we might reply to a comment about animals tolerating extreme weather. Cattle have an average body temperature of 102 degrees, so they naturally prefer cooler weather. During wintertime, cattle grow a heavy coat of fur that helps to keep them toasty warm down to 19 degrees. During cold weather, they also increase the amount of food that they eat to help increase their body temperatures. We monitor the weather and the animals every day to ensure that we do not subject them to elements that are beyond what they can tolerate. So here we've included some information about these species that this person may not have any experience with, and then we also reiterate that it's something we're very aware of. And on days where there is extreme weather, that is our highest priority, trying to make sure that these animals don't deal with something that's beyond what they can tolerate. Next slide. So here's some additional resources. If you're wanting to learn more about social media, we've published a really, really great, useful workbook that has step-by-step instructions on setting up social media accounts. It's got weekly posting ideas. There's calendars you can print out and write on. There's exercises on coming up with different things to post. It's a really comprehensive workbook. You can download it in PDF at that link right there, or we can also mail you a copy if you contact us. And then I'll let Luke tell you about some of the AFTRA publications.
So you'll also find other resources on farm marketing and social media marketing on our ATRA website, atra.ncat.org, which is a site where you can also find over 300 publications on sustainable agriculture, in addition to recorded webinars like this one, tutorials, and other videos. Next slide. So if you have any questions, feel free to email us. You can get in touch with one of our ATRA specialists at askanag@ncat.org. We also have a toll-free hotline, which you can see the number below for the English hotline. We also have a Spanish hotline with the number included down below at the bottom of the slide. Next slide.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Luke and Lauren, for all of that really great information. We do have a couple of questions that have come in, and others who are watching, if you have a question, please type that into the question box, and we'll take a few moments here to answer some of these questions. Luke, this first question is for you. On Instagram, do you also include written content? Is it just captions, or does it include more?
Sure, that's a great question. So an Instagram post is going to be composed of a photo and a caption, or possibly a video and a caption. So yes, all of the Instagram posts that we post have a caption, which will just kind of give a little more detail about what's going on in the shot, what we're growing, maybe what we're doing on the farm that day, or for example, if it's a shot of a farm product, when we're delivering it to the store, where they can farm the product, how much it costs, things like that. So we'll include all that in the caption, in addition to relevant hashtags, or maybe if we're tagging someone, tagging another business, that will all be in the caption.
Great. The next question, Luke, I think it's for you as well. Do you have any experience with paid for ads on Facebook?
Yes, I do. And that is something we just didn't have time to really get into during this webinar, since this is more of an introductory webinar on social media marketing. But we're definitely going to touch on that in detail in our next webinar, which is going to be specific on Facebook, which will be in June. So advertising on Facebook, you have a few options. Just to kind of briefly give you an overview of the options there. You can either boost a post, so it might be regular content you're posting that you want to pay a little bit to make sure that more people see it, and that could be something where even $5 can go a long way in making sure there are more eyeballs that see your post. Or you can actually create an ad on Facebook where you have a post that's going to appear in a target demographics feed, and that's where you really go in and choose who your target demographic is, what audience you want to target, and depending on how much money you pay for that ad, that'll depend on how many people see that post. And this is something where it can be effective, especially if you want to just contribute maybe $5 to a post to make sure people can see your post if you're at a new market, or you want to highlight a new product that you're really trying to sell. But definitely tune in to our June webinar, where we're going to get into this in more detail.
Okay. We'll take just a couple of more questions here. Do you have any suggestions for logo design and how we should look to optimize them for social media platforms?
I'll go ahead and answer that question. We cover that quite a bit in the workbook that I mentioned. There's a whole section on branding and how to develop a logo. I'll tell you our personal experience. We had a graphic designer. We just paid them for a few hours of their time to come up with a few suggested logos. I think for a logo, keeping it simple and keeping it eye-catching. There's a lot of logos where there's too much going on. You can't really see the farm name. So think about, brainstorm a few key characteristics about your operation, about who you are, and try and distill those into an image. And I highly suggest, if you can afford it, a few hours of a graphic designer's time can be pretty affordable, and their expertise and polish goes a long way into really getting a logo that stands out and makes you look really professional. Luke, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, one thing I would add would be that you want to make sure that you have a logo format that's square or round, in addition to one that might be more horizontal in orientation. But at minimum, you definitely want a square or round logo that's going to be, ideal for your Facebook or Instagram icon image, your profile picture. Most of those, it's a square format, so that's what you want your logo to be. And like Lauren was saying, something simple that's going to be clear, even when it's a small icon.
Great. Luke, this is probably a question that you can answer. Can you set up your Facebook and Instagram accounts to only share certain posts? And does sharing work in both directions, from Facebook to Instagram and Instagram to Facebook?
You cannot set it up to just share certain posts. I'm unsure why you would want to do it that way, but if there are certain posts you don't want to go on your business Facebook or Instagram, those seem like they'd probably be ideally suited to your personal page. When you're managing a business Facebook profile account, if you have a business Instagram account, that is where you can actually manage both accounts kind of through the same business administration tools that Facebook has designed for business users. So yes, you can create content and post it on both Facebook and Instagram, like through that business manager tool that Facebook has. And then also when it comes to paying for advertising and promoting your posts through Facebook, if you have a connected business Instagram account, you can have your boosted posts and your advertisements be advertised both on Facebook and Instagram.
Great. So one last question before we wrap things up. Will the June webinar go into detail on Facebook analytics?
Yeah, we will touch on that to some degree, especially when it comes to making sure that any money you're spending on boosting posts and creating advertisements on Facebook, making sure that's worth your money. So we'll talk about that, and just making sure that the effort you're putting into Facebook is worth your time and money spent. So we'll definitely touch on analytics in that June webinar.
Great. Jason, can you go back to the previous slide that shows the web address for the social media workbook, so folks can see that? That would be great as we wrap things up there. That poultryscience.uark.edu web address is where you can download the social media for your farm business workbook. All right, thank you all so much for participating in today's webinar. As a reminder, this webinar will be posted on the ATTRA website at attra.ncat.org/video. So you can go back and catch all of it and share it with others. Also be on the lookout for information about the upcoming webinars, as Luke has been talking about. We will be advertising that and posting the registration link in the next few days. And as you exit the webinar, please complete this survey, as that will help us make improvements for our webinars and continue to offer these to you all. So thank you again for joining us.